Good day, UniVersus fans. My name is Levi, and I'm reporting live from the UA Sports Festival Stadium for our GenCon Regional License Exam. And of course, by that, I mean Lucas Oil Stadium, but I think y'all get the picture. We are halfway into our new season with our new set Undaunted Raid in tow, and we're really shaping up to see an exciting meta and an exciting event. It's GenCon, baby. There can hardly be a regional more hype, especially with Legendary Wolf Games in tow as our tournament organizer, and it seems like the players agreed because they really came to show us some interesting stuff. Taking a look at this character breakdown here, of course, the Kings. Mirio and Overhaul, our fan favorite Clash deck characters, have been non-stop topping the representation and really starting to show their way into the top cuts as well, getting that sweet conversion rate. Are they going to continue to dominate, or will some of our other set 5 characters finally see their time in the spotlight? Midoriya 4, a character that has seen constant, insane numbers of representation, but really hasn't quite made that four-way into the top cuts yet. Is this finally going to be his event? We will just have to wait and see. But you know whose time it is in the limelight now? Eraserhead. Touted as one of the strongest characters for ages now, but with a very high skill curve. The advent of a lot of the new punches in Set 5 Undaunted Raid has made his aggression much more efficient and much more streamlined, possibly touting him as the best deck. Only time will tell. Of course, though, there's some other fan favorites here from the format of old that we know will never go away. Kyokajiro representing herself as still an absolute aggro powerhouse. But we can't talk about aggro powerhouses without also bringing in my man Kendo Rappa into the fray. He has touted himself as possibly the strongest of the other Shihei Saikai characters, and we see a lot of bullet punches registered today. It might finally be his time to overtake the punches from some of our other more main characters. And of course, speaking of punches, speaking of main characters, we got Mirio's best buddy Amajiki all the way down here. Easily one of the most favorite pet decks from a ton of players as the hype for Set 5 grew, but had a very slow start into the format. We didn't see him repped at many of our RLEs so far, but people are finally starting to crack the code with this character and finally starting to show up with him at these events. Will it be his time to shine? There is so much speculation going into these 8 rounds, and I know that our players are going to give us a fantastic show worthy of being at GenCon. With one of the most exciting brackets of any RLE ever, Day 2 of GenCon delivered us some ridiculously action-packed matches. In the end, though, it was the Shihei Saikai who dominated our coverage and our bracket. We spent most of our stream watching Overhaul and Mimic that it was only fitting they made it all the way to the finals. Overhaul is no stranger to both hype and top cuts this season, so finding him here was no true surprise. The real shock came from the other end of the table with Justin Martin's Mimic deck. This little guy is one of the most interesting characters to come out of Undaunted Raid because he asks you to play a very different game of UniVersus. He is all about the assets, our green cards that act like foundations but with much more powerful abilities, all at the trade-off of they cannot be committed to pass checks. Now, Mimic's allowed to circumvent that once per check, as well as getting damage manipulation off of it and getting to tutor almost any attack from his discard pile when he checks his assets as well. With all of that in mind, Mimic decks tend to look a little funky, often sporting as many, if not more assets than foundations themselves. With that in mind, we gotta have some real good ones to play. Trigger is the quintessential Mimic asset. Between its Mimic exclusive response to buff our checks and Mimic's own static ability, every copy of Trigger is the equivalent of building 2 foundations. Now, that's great for playing our cards, but what about buffing our cards? Well, for such a little guy, Mimic is putting some serious hours into the gym. Training weights. This is every ounce of the aggro in our deck in one card. This asset can commit itself for 1 damage for every time you've played this Enhance. And then its other 2 abilities both allow you to ready it somehow so that you can keep committing it and stacking up that damage. Mimic supercharges this though, as his own response is going to pack 2 more damage onto that ability every single time you use it. This means that your reps start at 3 damage and only get better and better from there. Now, moving on to our attacks, this is going to be a direct lead into Twisting Azure Inferno. Azure is infamous for being one of the most powerful attacks in our game, as long as you can meet that 7 damage condition. While we don't play any actions in this deck, Our training weights combo is the easiest way to get that enhance online right away. Now, no frontman combo is complete without a couple supporting actors, and that's where something like Shocking Entrance makes its debut, played for that very simple but strong enhance to just go grab whatever assets we need out of our discard pile. See where we're going with this? Mimic's response when we check an asset lets us go grab Twisting Azure out of the discard pile, while Shocking Entrance lets us go grab Training Weights in the same vein for an easy setup of those strings. And then once our combos are fully in tow, we can send out one of the scariest finishers ever in Trigger Transformation. A massively statted move that not only gets bigger the more assets you have, but also gets easier to play. Most Mimic decks are going to effortlessly turn that big scary 7 difficulty number into a 4 and slam insane numbers of training weights damage onto it. Justin's deck was a well-oiled machine, no doubt about it. But when it came time to facing his one and only boss, he fell just a little short. The young head of the Shiei Saikai Overhaul. He towered over us all, and in the hands of his biggest fan, Andrew Holder, dominated this event with his ruthless plan. Chisaki is a powerhouse of a character, providing amazing levels of value, advantage, and card manipulation. Building cards from his hand, playing them from the stage, and tacking damage onto his attacks while restoring himself, this man does it all. But that's only if you can keep him fueled. He's the master of resources as long as you can generate them for him. The best Overhaul decks are the ones that draw and build lots of cards to help fuel our enhances nonstop. Now we've seen success from this character on every symbol so far, but Andrew sought to bring the life symbol to the front of the conversation at this event, and boy did he bring it. Our attack lineup was a melting pot of moves, but with a major focus on the punch package. This was the logical choice. You get to utilize 2 different types of moves that both replace the card in your hand with Back Alley Haymaker and Future Charge, all while keeping them relatively threatening with Overhaul's response. Even our most unassuming resource generating moves can be very scary, and that goes doubly so for our actually very scary moves. Repeated 100% smash is the star of the deck, being that it can be played very late in the string only on a 5 difficulty thanks to Overhaul letting us play without progressive difficulty one time. Paying potentially 0 foundations for this, all while readying a huge chunk of your stage, is a tempo swing like no other. And with both EX and powerful, yeah, this card does some serious damage too. One of the strongest parts about this deck though is the variety of the ways it can close those games. Sure, some pumped up repeateds can do it very easily, but we can never forget the life symbol's generic huge damage moves like Tongue Whip and Cannon Blast, all of which are just as scary when coming in for free at the end of a string. It is clear that our punches were extremely pivotal to our fight, but what about what's going into our stage? The life symbol is one of the best jack of all trades there is, offering damage pump, speed reduction, and card draw across its foundations in spades. Passing the torch is one of the most pivotal cards in this deck, as Overhaul is rarely unable to use a card in his hand somehow. New Training Method not only lets us ramp our builds, but also snags key foundations to increase our hand size and make sure our ideal stage comes together. Then the trio of Rescue Completed, Cooperation Offer, and I'll Protect You make up such a powerful level of speed manipulation that it was often very, very hard to imagine breaking down some of the walls Andrew was consistently putting up with this deck. And so with that flurry of punches, defense galore, and the power to break every single rule of the world, well, it didn't quite matter how much green Justin was working with, because Andrew came to win it all. And as a longtime professional player and pillar of positivity in the community, seeing Andrew finally take home the gold was a joy that many, many of us reveled in alongside himself. And so as the last Tongue Whip came down for game, Andrew Holder struck gold with his favorite character, Overhaul. Massive shoutouts to both finalists, but only one could stand at the top, and as we all know, Overhaul is, in fact, the coolest. How amazing to see a Clash deck character and such a rogue character throwing down in the grand finals of our GenCon regional license exam. It was an absolute spectacle to watch, and I cannot wait to see what more comes on the horizon. Of course, if you didn't get in on any of the GenCon action, there is so much more game on the way. Our very next RLE coming up in the US is in Rochester, New York on September 9th. I sure hope I get to see you there. As always though, if you aren't, you can catch all of the action live over at UniVersus CCG on Twitch. However you participate in these regional license exams, there is something for everyone, and I cannot wait for our next event coming up. Until then, keep up the raid heroes and keep up the performances, because there are so many more amazing prizes to come and so much more glory to behold. I will see you next time.